There are some possible rule changes being explored by the HMRC which might affect money that you have in an ISA. And I want to talk about the three biggest parts of that policy change that's being explored in this video. These haven't came into effect right now, but they are being explored, and I think it's worth you just paying attention. If you have an ISA in the UK, at present you can transfer money between the cash side of the ISA through to the stocks and shares side. So for example, I use Trading 212 and I initially invested money into the cash ISA, and then I've been able to move that into the stocks and shares side and then invest it into stocks when I'm ready. Now recently Rachel Reeves has changed the rules around what you can invest into an ISA from £20,000 in a year down to £12,000. Now what they're exploring from the HMRC perspective is that you will only be able to transfer money into the stocks and shares side, and you will not be able to move it back into the cash ISA side. So that could be a big change, especially if you're somebody that likes to de-risk your potential investments. You're feeling like you've invested in the stock market, but now you're not so sure about what the future looks like, so you want to pull it back out into the cash ISA. That could potentially be stopped moving forward if this legislation from the HMRC comes into effect. So that's policy number one. Rule number two that's being explored by HMRC right now is what they define as cash-like investments. Now typically that could be something like a money market fund or short-dated bond funds or low-risk investments that people use for stability. Now this hasn't yet been defined, it's being explored, but this is another part of your ISA that could take a hit if the HMRC decide to push this rule through. Now again, it hasn't been defined what cash-like investments currently are, so this is a bit of a grey area. However, it is worth paying attention to, especially if you do like a kind of low risk investment, for example, like money market funds. And number three, and this is the one that really piqued my interest, and this is a potential charge on the interest that you gain within your stocks and shares ISA. Whereas previously anything that you've held in stocks and shares has been tax-free, this potential change could lead to them being apportioning a charge, whatever that means, a charge or an interest level attached to your savings within the stocks and shares ISA. Now where this becomes really interesting is that they're creating almost a two-tier structure here, because anybody under 65, these potential rule changes could affect, whereas anybody over 65, that might be completely different. So we're sitting now in an area where if you're a young person, look, I'm 47, I have my investments, I use Trading 212. If you're interested in that platform, there's a link down below that you can use to go and have a look into it. I use Trading 212 as my ISA host. I initially started with a cash ISA, and then I invested in the stocks and shares side. And within the stocks and shares side, you can actually also gain interest on cash that sits within there. But here we have HMRC now deciding whether there'll be a charge, who knows what that means, or whether there could be interest levied against any earnings or interest that you gain in your stocks and shares ISA. So those are three new rule changes that are being explored. I personally have a stocks and shares ISA. I use some of that money to help fund a lifestyle where I live abroad here in Malaysia, out of the UK. You can hold an ISA when you're outside of the country. I can't invest any new money into it, and I can't also open a new ISA, but I'm allowed to continue to hold my ISA and gain interest on what I've already previously opened before leaving the UK. But when you put the three of them together, when you join the three of those potential rule changes, you have the possibility of a charge on interest within your ISA. You are looking at the possibility of no longer being able to move from stocks and shares back to a cash ISA. And then the third option there is you have the possibility that they deem a money market fund as a cash-like investment, and the rules change on this. So it's really one to watch here. It hasn't came into effect right now, and the best that you can probably hope for here is that many of the ISA organisations push back heavily, because I could imagine that the management and just the day-to-day handling of these rule changes across millions of accounts could be technically very, very difficult. So it's going to be interesting to see what the feedback will be like from ISA companies like Trading 212 or Nutmeg or any of the other organisations that hold or that offer these facilities, what they say in return to HMRC to push back on all of this. But it's fascinating, right? It comes back to the point, you're supposed to save, you're supposed to try and invest in your later years, your future, you're trying to save up a little bit of money, and here we have an HMRC organisation that just wants to continually take and take and take from you. And I really just wonder, like, you know, policies around you will own nothing and you will be happy. Well, after last week's budget policy, after seeing how working people with families are being pushed to the limit, whereas if you are reliant on the state, if you are reliant on benefits and handouts, then you will be financially rewarded and well looked after. It really is a country right now, the UK, that is driving people to the limit, and I just wonder how much more people can take of a government and a structure like this that just seems to want to go after the everyday person. You can let me know down below what you think of all of this. So again, to quickly recap, that's a possibility of no longer being able to transfer money between your stocks and shares ISA back to a cash ISA. Determining what they term as a cash-like investment. And lastly, the one that really worries me, a charge or an interest applied to the interest that you earn in your stocks and shares ISA. Okay, that's it for this video. I thought I would update you. Let's keep an eye on that and see what comes down the line. I'm sure we'll hear soon enough. Thanks for watching.